Now, for this episode, I thought it'd be super interesting to basically show you how I am going to use an AI tool to help me write a blog post on ultimately the comparison between two automation tools, right? So I'm pretty familiar with Zapier, also have used make.com. And what I'm basically going to do is I'm going to try to make a blog post that is comparing the two. Now, I thought what would make this super interesting is if I compared what I would get out of ChatGPT's new model 4.0 and then also Manus AI. A lot of people don't have access to Manus AI. I do. So I wanted to basically give them the same exact prompt and then compare the results of the two to show you what you could expect. But then I'm also, as we go through it, I'm going to modify the prompts slightly to see what I end up with. And ultimately, hopefully, we have a blog post that is good enough that I could use to post on the dataSmarts website, or at least something that would serve as a good building block that I could tweak and modify to serve as a good first post on comparing two tools. So I thought this would be super useful. So I'm going to share my screen. Let's do that here. We're going to... All right, so here we have our screen pulled up. Now, this is in ChatGPT. This is probably looks familiar. So what I'm going to say is something very generic, right? I'm not going to be very specific at all. So this says, I want you to write a blog post that compares Make to Zapier. And that's it. And I'm going to submit that. And I'm going to jump over to Manus. Submit the same thing. So ChatGPT is already getting into it. Make versus Zapier, which automation tool is right for you? Manus. So one of the things that I have noticed about Manus is that Manus is like very intentional about what it's doing, and it likes to tell you what it is doing before it starts doing it. It is almost like it spends a little bit more time up front building a plan. And then it's like, okay, this is what I think you want me to do. I'm going to build a plan. What do you think about my plan? Then it goes and executes the plan. The other thing that it does is it seems to be significantly more technical than ChatGPT. So I bet ChatGPT is already done. So yeah, so here you have it. So I don't know how many words that is, but I've got a full blog post. ChatGPT basically, it starts off with a TLDR, which is pretty cool. Too long, didn't read. So it goes through easy use interface, complex logic, speed, pricing, and then who it's best for, which giving it absolutely no prompts, I think that is a pretty cool little snippet. Now it breaks down each one of those sections. So easy use has a small section. And then what it basically does is it gives a check mark, to use Zapier if you're just getting started, use Make if you're ready to nerd out, which is funny. Interface and flexibility, logic and power, speed and reliability, pricing, best use cases. So it goes through all of that and then it gives you a verdict. And then basically the verdict is you want quick wins, use Zapier. If you want full control logic, Make will blow your mind. Pretty cool. And then it also gives you some final thoughts, which I think is pretty interesting. And then at the end of it, it actually is saying subscribe to dataSmarts, which is pretty cool. I jump back over to Manus. Manus is still working. So what it is doing, it is showing me that it's researching the Make platform. It is wow. So it's creating a file, block comparison, scrolling down, checking. So it is basically going through the entire website for Make. So yeah. So right now it is still researching make.com, which was formerly Integramat. What? Make is such a better name than Integramat. Okay, so now it's updating his plan, researching make, continuing to research make, researching make, researching make. Wow. So one thing that I have noticed is if you are trying to iterate, right? If you are the type of person that maybe you're not exactly sure what you need, or you don't know what it might look like, you don't know what let's say what success would look like, even if the agent and the chat model is able to execute exactly what you want, you don't really know what that looks like. So I do think ChatGPT, we probably could have already gone through 2 or 3 entire blog posts, right? I could have had it write that first one and then said, hey, you know what? Let me ask it to make it a little bit more technical, right? Great. Thanks for this. Can you make the article a little bit more technical, right? So I'm going to ask it another prompt. Now, if I go back over to Manus is just now. So what Manus did was it went through and it researched everything about make. Now it is starting to research everything about Zapier. So it has been running 40 seconds right now, reviewing Zapier. So again, it is still doing research. Let's go back over to ChatGPT. Second blog post is just about done. Second blog post is done. Now let's say, I hadn't even looked at it, but let's say, great, thanks. Can you create another version that is geared towards non-technical business owners or that have never used? So now I'm saying, great, thanks. Can you create another version that is geared towards non-technical business owners or operators that have never used an automation tool before? Go over to Manus. Manus is still researching Zapier. So almost 2 minutes on Zapier. So what I do feel like is that at least in tasks like this, right? Now, granted, the initial prompt was pretty vague, but ChatGPT is basically, I don't want to say it's giving me the cliff notes, but it is doing like a quick and dirty, right? It's going to do some basic research. It's going to figure out what it can find on Make. It can figure out what it can find on Zapier. And then it wants to give me back results. So it is optimized for speed, at least from what I can tell, specifically in this example. What Manus is doing, Manus feels a lot more like deep research, right? It feels like something that you would do in deep research or Perplexity, right? Or it maybe even like Google's Notebook LM. It's spending so much more time gathering information, right? It is actually spending minutes. God knows how much information that actually is able to process in minutes, but it is doing minutes worth of research to understand everything it can about Make. And then it is basically spending that same amount of time on Zapier. And now what it is going to do is it is going to produce, what it says is I've completed my research on both Make and Zapier. I've gathered comprehensive information about their pricing structures, features, user experience, and limitations from official websites and review sites. See, so that's pretty cool. So it didn't just go to their website. It went to review sites and it got information based on what people are saying on official websites and reviews, right? Like that is pretty interesting. It's significantly more robust. So the output, I would imagine, would have a lot more depth to it, right? That would be a lot closer to what you might get from, let's say, an engineer that has worked in both tools for, a considerable amount of time. The amount of insight that it can provide doing that much research is going to far exceed what ChatGPT put together, in just really, 15 to 30 seconds worth of processing before it spit out a blog post. Now, remember, we've already gone through and done 3 different versions, right? So we already prompted or modified our prompt a couple times. One to be more technical than the first one, and then the last prompt was to be less technical and geared towards business owners and operators. Manus, on the other hand, is still working on the first request, right? And it looks like here, if I'm looking down at the Manus is working little modal, it is saying that it is on, I believe the way to interpret this is it is on step 5 of 8. So right now it looks like it has compared key features, capabilities on both platforms. Now it's looking at analyzing the pricing models for Make and Zapier. It's also evaluating user experience interface on both platforms. We go back over to chat. Yeah, I've got another blog post fully functional. I do think that, if you're not sure what you're looking for, I think that you could end up wasting a bunch of time on Manus. Like, if I don't even know if this is exactly what I should be posting on my website, if this content or the concept is going to work, and I'm spending, and this sounds ridiculous, if I'm spending minutes waiting for this model to generate an output, then I'm going to waste a lot of time in Manus because I'm waiting around for the result to know that it's not going to work. ChatGPT, put this in there, read the post. I'm like, that's not really going to work. Okay, let me switch. Let me pivot to something else, right? I only wasted 15, 30 seconds. I'm not out what will probably end up being, how long have we been recording? 12 minutes. So what will probably end up being 10, 15 minutes before Manus is able to put something together. So now it looks like it's on step 6 of 8. Completed the research comparison phase of Make versus Zapier blog posts. Analyze both platforms, detail, comparing their key features, blah, blah, blah. Now begin writing the comprehensive blog post that synthesizes information into a cohesive, informative article. Structure it to help readers understand the strengths and weaknesses of each platform and determine which might be better suited for their specific needs. So I imagine that this article is going to be significantly longer, right? So what I will do is I will post, I should be able to do this. I will post links to the articles that are generated with the exact prompt for both, if you want to check that out. I think it would be a pretty cool comparison. So we'll sell on 6 for 8. Nothing left to be done. Now, one thing to note about chat is that chat knows about dataSmarts. Manus does not know about dataSmarts. So at the end of all the blog posts, it's saying that, if you're still unsure which tool is right for you, or you just want to help getting started, subscribe to dataSmarts, which is pretty cool. Like, it's smart enough to know that this is something that, I've been building, and it knows to try to, push people to register, which is awesome. Manus, 8 of 8. Okay, we're getting close. What are the last things it did? Oh, there we have it. Boom, just got the results. And we are at almost 14 minutes. So here you can see the article, Make versus Zapier. So let's see, what is Make, what is Zapier? So that's pretty cool. So it gives you a little bit of background. Core platform architecture, visual design philosophy, pretty neat. Makes circular workflow design. Zapier's linear workflow design. So that's pretty interesting, right? It's talking about all the way to workflow design, which is pretty sophisticated. Integration capability, Makes integration approach, pretty cool. Zapier's integration ecosystem, 5,000 plus app integrations. Make 2,000 plus app integrations. So I don't know where it found that, right? But that's fantastic to have that level of detail. Data handling and transformation, processing your information, Makes data transformation capabilities, Zapier's data handling approach, right? So this is pretty cool. So Make, it excels at complex data manipulation. exceptional data transformation capabilities of visual mapping. If we go down to Zapier, basic data mapping with less visual representation. So right there, that's a big key differentiator. If you're reading this article and you know that you're going to have to do some sophisticated data mapping, then you know right off the bat, Make might be more suited to what you're looking for. Pricing model, pretty interesting that it was able to get down to the pricing. Free plan, core plan, pro plan, teams plan, enterprise plan for Make. Zapier, free plan, professional plan, team plan, enterprise plan. Now it's comparing the pricing, which is pretty interesting. User experience and interface, easy use versus power. So that's pretty cool. Like it's actually going through and, going to tell you what's the user experience like for Make, what's the user experience for Zapier. Ideal use case. So this is pretty interesting. When to choose each platform, right? So like I said earlier, choose Make if you have complex data processing workflows, high volume automation needs, advanced technical users and developers, visual thinkers, process designers, budget conscious organizations with sophisticated needs. Okay, scenarios requiring precise scheduling control. When you use Zapier, beginners and non-technical users, basic to moderate automation needs, teams requiring broad app support, organizations prioritizing simplicity and standardization, collaborative teams with many users, users needing additional tools. Industry-specific recommendations. Industries better suited for Make. So that was pretty cool. E-commerce, financial services, software development, data-intensive businesses. Better suited for Zapier, small businesses, marketing agencies, educational institutions, nonprofits. So that's pretty interesting, right? Because as soon as somebody comes in, you could almost say, hey, are you e-commerce, financial service, software development, or a data-intensive business? Maybe you should go towards Make. Are you a nonprofit, educational institution? Maybe you should go towards Zapier. Making your decision, key considerations, technical expertise, complexity of workflow, data transformation requirements, volume. I think that's very interesting. Budget constraints, app ecosystem. Now the conclusion. Both Make and Zapier are excellent automation platforms with distinct strengths and approaches. The better platform depends entirely on your specific needs, technical capabilities, and preferences. Now, you can tell that the output here is totally different, right? One is significantly more detailed, significantly more thorough, but it also took a lot longer to process. So what is interesting here is depending on your use case, it might make more sense for you to use ChatGPT to write a quick little blog article. But if you're really trying to put out substantive content, right? If you're really trying to build out your website with thorough, detailed information, like what I'm going to try to do for dataSmarts, I'm going to want to build off of this type of content, right? The type of content that Manus gives me for a comparison like Zapier and Make. Now, I can go in here and humanize this article by giving, for example, one thing that I don't love about Make is even if their tool is super sophisticated, I just don't love the interface. It just feels like very gamified to me, right? So I can add that, right? It's a personal experience. That's my opinion. And now for Zapier, one of the things that I cannot stand is trying to revise Zaps. It is so complicated to figure out which Zap is the one that's in production, which one's being edited, which revision is actually running. So that, again, is something that I can add to this, but the foundational pieces are already there. So sure, it might have taken 10 minutes for this post to run, but this post is going to be a lot closer to what I would want to have on dataSmarts than what I got out of ChatGPT. Again, ChatGPT, I was able to do 3 iterations. I probably could have done 5 or 6 iterations of that blog post while Manus was working, but the outputs would never have matched. I would have had to give ChatGPT significantly more information in the prompt for it to give me something like I got out of Manus. Now, what I could probably do moving forward is, let's say that this is the template for how I want to create automation comparison tools or just tool comparisons in general. I could publish this blog post, and then I could take this blog post, feed it into ChatGPT in a more specific and intentional prompt and say, I want you to write a blog post that is like this and give it what Manus said as an example and see what it can come up with. Will it do as good a job with the research and putting together this scientific of a comparison? I don't know. But just wanted to take a second and show you guys, one, how I'm using AI tools to create dataSmarts, and also to give you a little insight into what Manus is like, what it's like using that tool, and how it compares to the more well-known ChatGPT. So hopefully you like this. Hopefully this was helpful. If you enjoyed this video, consider sharing, subscribing, leaving a review. All those things help us expand to a broader audience. And until next time, stay smart.